What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. Today we've got Garrett Unruh on the show. Some of you may have seen Garrett on Twitter or Instagram as CardCutter. Garrett also has a great YouTube channel from the same name. Again, we'll put links to his YouTube channel in the show notes here. Or you can just search CardCutter on YouTube. Hey, give him a sub while you're there. Today we talked to Garrett about how he got into wrestling, how he got into wrestling cards, some of the differences that he sees between sports cards and wrestling cards, because he is dabbling in both, and much, much more. But before we get there, just a few reminders of how you can help support my content. The best thing you can do for this channel, and it's the easiest, and it's free, and it takes 2 seconds. Hit the subscribe button. If you like this video or you like my other videos, give me a thumbs up. Tell a friend about the show, a wrestling fan, somebody likes sports cards, somebody that likes any kind of collectibles. If you think they would enjoy the content that I'm producing on this channel, send the link to them. Podcasts. Everybody likes podcasts, right? The Wrestling with Cards podcast. Solo show where I talk about some things that are not going to be on this channel, and then some of the interviews are, but you're going to want to listen to both the podcast and watch these videos. The podcast is somewhat of an audio companion to these videos. The Worlds Collide podcast, myself, Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com, getting together to talk about all things wrestling cards. Again, both of those podcasts are available on all popular podcast platforms. If you're digging it, tell a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review. If you would like to help contribute to my content monetarily, links below to the Wrestling with Cards Patreon page, where you can become a valued member of the community for as little as $1 a month. Seriously, $1. That $1 will go a long way into going back into equipment and to doing giveaways, and not to mention $1 a month to get your name in the credits of all these videos. There are some other tiers within there that you can pay more for and request video topics. Join the Wrestling with Cards booking committee. You can come on the show, and we'll just have some fun discussing some wrestling cards. Also, links below to my eBay store if you'd like to pick up some cheap cards, some great slabs, maybe some memorabilia, and my social platform links are all down there as well. And of course, links to buy me a coffee if you would like to leave me a donation for that, because it takes me a lot of caffeine to get through these videos. What's up, wrestling card fans? We've got special guest today. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I was hoping I'd get on here eventually.
Yeah, I've got a long list, and I was like, I need to get the people that are not, making the circuit, making the towns, so to speak. And I've been watching your content on YouTube for a while, so I figured I'd get you on. Segue over to just a brief introduction for anybody who's not familiar with you or your channel.
So I've been collecting for a long, long time. So I was about 8 years old, got into baseball cards. And then as I became an adult, got into football cards, and I'm actually pretty new into wrestling. I didn't start getting into wrestling collecting until kind of COVID kicked off. And it was because at the time, if you remember, everything was so expensive.
Yeah.
And you couldn't find anything in the wild. Like, you weren't going to Target or Walmart and finding anything.
Sure.
But there was wrestling there. And so a buddy of mine, Canadian Mike, Canadian Cards on YouTube, and we just started shooting the gab through StreamYard. And I was like, man, let's just do this. Let's just start collecting wrestling. And it started out really fun, and it's still really fun. And it was really nice at first because no one was and so the prices were really, really awesome. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, you didn't start collecting wrestling cards, but I know you're a diehard fan. So when did you start actually being a fan of wrestling in general?
Oh man, I remember, I can't tell you the year, but I remember my parents would be in the living room watching TV, and they would let me go to their room and sit on their bed because they had a TV in their bed or in their bedroom. And I'd put on Monday Night Raw.
Nice.
And I would just sit there and just be infatuated with Monday Night Raw, and they let me do it every week.
Every Monday.
Yeah, but I remember like the Stone Cold and Rock. It was that era.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it. And man, it bit me hard. And then once I became a teenager, and like all your friends tell you it's not cool, then I was like, oh, it must not be cool. Like, I don't want anyone to know. So then, I joined the military, and I had a wife and family and kind of got away from it. But now my 11-year-old is just hooked, like big time.
That's awesome.
AEW, like, he's a Kenny Omega nut. Kind of going off on a story here. He was so upset when Hangman Adam Page beat Kenny Omega.
Right.
So around the house, like we're not allowed to say cowboy anything, like cowboy boots, like it doesn't matter. You say cowboy, and he's like, "What'd you say?" So
That's awesome to hear that somebody that young is being passionate, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are a little bit concerned with, like, they think this is like, people for me and you, or people that are older than us that know wrestling history, and they think, well, maybe these kids aren't going to be such a fan of the modern product now, 20 years from now, maybe they're not going to have that nostalgia like me and you have. So that's refreshing to hear. Is he into cards at all, or is he getting that way?
no, he's really into figs. Like
That's, yeah.
really, really. Like I think we probably buy, I would say average out maybe 2 a week, and we probably break 3 a week. And I know that math doesn't add up. That's not how it seems around here. I think Becky Lynch's leg fell off last night in the living room. So
that's interesting. We keep talking to people who go with the figures over the cards, and I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic. We'll get into it in a little bit, as far as like the differences between that we see, both of us, because I know we both work in both worlds of sports cards and wrestling cards, and kind of contrasting and comparing those. But you said you didn't get into wrestling cards during COVID. What do you think took you so long to get into it?
It never crossed my mind, honestly. And like I said, the only reason that I went down that rabbit hole was because I'm primarily a football card collector, or at least was. It's wrestling's taken over. Yeah, I haven't bought a football card in over a year. But I couldn't find football anywhere. And then all of the stuff on the secondhand market on eBay, like singles and inserts and all that stuff, were just going to the moon. And I was like, man, this is silly.
Yeah.
Like, I have to figure out something else. It's either take a pause on collecting. I don't think I'd ever stop, but take a pause or go down a different avenue. And that road was wide open at the time.
So do you know what products you started with or gravitated to first?
It really wasn't products. It was like Wrestling All-Stars, to be honest with you.
Good place to start if you're going to start.
Right. So I don't even know what made me go down that rabbit hole, but I know early on, I came across Mr. Rob England and his content on social media, and then David Peck shortly thereafter, and his stuff. And I'm like, man alive. Like, and it just snowballed. I think I bought my first set, 1982 Wrestling All-Star Series A. The first set, it was like a month or two into it, I bought for $1,200.
Nice. That seems cheap now.
Right. I don't even think you can get a Hogan now for that. So, and then I went down the Cardinal thing. It seemed like at the time the wrestling community was like, you got to buy the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. So then I bought 2 or 3 of those sets. And so anything I do, I have the motto of anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So, man, I don't believe in the shallow end. I just jump straight in the deep end.
Yeah, I've done that too for certain things. And then, I've never, like, taking that approach has never bit me, like, for the negative. Usually I've either kind of kept the value of it the same, where I could trade with some people, or just, if I needed to get out of it because I wanted a different card, or, there has been times where I've made a lot of money or got, a lot of equity in trades with other people by just buying 5 of a card. And that's why in the sports card world, you see like so many people buying, pick whoever it is, PSA 10s, and buying like a stack of them, so right. I don't know if we're going to see that in wrestling. I don't see that as much, other than the All-Stars. Like you said, that seems to be like one set that people really do that on. So let's, I guess, kind of transition into the little bit of the sports card comparison and wrestling cards. I don't even know where to start on this, but this, when I started you were the first guest in 2022, and I wanted to get more people on that are in wrestling, but also outside. I'm sure as well as I do, there's a lot of people that are in wrestling cards that don't understand how the rest of the hobby operates. Right. And so just talk about some comparing, contrasting things you see, some things you like, don't like, and we'll just kind of bounce ideas off each other on things we're seeing.
I think the biggest thing, or positive thing, is from what I've seen in my experience so far, in I guess a year and a half, 2 years of doing this, is the wrestling collecting community is much more helpful, much more kind, much more supportive Now, granted, it's a lot smaller,
Sure.
tight-knit group, especially on like Instagram and Twitter. But you don't get that a whole lot of times. And maybe it's just the crowd that I'm in. I don't know. Maybe I haven't found the right crowd in the sports card world. But like I can't post anything without the same 10 to 15 people saying, awesome card or
right.
And all that. So I think that's really cool. It really feels like a community. Everyone says the collecting community, but just because you do it and you do it and you do it, and that doesn't make us.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I think the wrestling card community as a whole is still kind of young and learning. Like what I mean by that is when I talk sports cards and you're talking grading and all this, and people kind of know, like, well, okay, if that's worth this much and I get it graded and it comes back X, it should be worth this. Well, in the wrestling card community, for the most part, I don't think that's a thing just yet.
Right.
What is it? I'm going to get my years wrong here. Like the 1994 Action Pack. Is that the Undertaker auto?
Yes, the Undertaker and Macho Man. Yeah.
Right. Like you get those, and you can find those raw, like in almost every wrestling group we're in, like in Facebook and such. And like, man, why is that thing not graded? Why is it not slabbed? And they'll sell it to you raw all day long, and they'll be happy with it. And we'll, people like you or I that know something about grading cards know the value of doing that. So I think that will come in time. At least I hope, because people are kind of shortchanging themselves. I think.
Yeah, that's one thing I've said that's a huge difference between sports and you know what, I say sports, but let's throw Pokemon, let's throw F1, let's all that stuff into sports. One big difference I see is kind of like you said. This shows that we're true collectors, but it also, I've talked about before, this kind of stagnates the market a little bit, because we've got a lot of people who we'll use your Undertaker example. They'll get that Undertaker auto. You never see it. It never sees the light of day. It doesn't get graded. It doesn't get sold. It doesn't get traded. It's gone. It's locked away in a collection. That makes it a lot harder for people to get into wrestling cards, because there's not as much out there, as opposed to the sports card world, where it seems like everybody's always trying to move up and level up and in and out of stuff. And I just don't see, that's kind of how I operate even within wrestling, but I don't see a lot of the wrestling community operating like that. Do you think that's going to change, especially, which we'll get into this in a minute, as Panini takes over?
I don't know. At first, I was kind of upset about the Topps losing the license, because like right next to me here, I know this isn't a show and tell segment, but
sure, show it off, whatever you got.
It is now.
Yep.
Like I've been doing the living set, like from the get, and so I bought a Z Folio.
I was just getting ready to say, is that a Z Folio? I've been promoting those binders forever.
It is, and so I just thought it was so cool, and I've bought them every single week. If you follow my content, I'm an autograph guy. Like that's really my primary thing. No matter what sport I collected, I've always liked autographs. And so if they're a living wrestler, I try to buy 5 of them, just in case I can get them at a signing or something like that. And then if they're deceased, I just get 1 for the set. So I was kind of upset that Topps lost the license, because obviously that's going away.
Right.
But think of all the major brands that Panini carries that they could do stuff with. I mean, can you imagine like WWE National Treasures?
It would be amazing.
Or WWE Flawless.
Yeah.
Like with the gear that these superstars wear to the ring. Holy smokes, man. Like a Flawless autograph with like dual relic and then an autograph in the middle. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I'd have to mortgage the house. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's something else that I think a lot of people are concerned about, is pricing. And like I just like to be honest with people. I don't want to be rude, but the wrestling, like the diehard wrestling fans are kind of in for a rude awakening when it comes to this product. And there's going to be products for you. There's Flawless and National Treasures, but there's also like Chronicles and there's Donruss. So there's going to be stuff for everybody. But I think it's just going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people. Do you have any advice that you would give to some of the people who aren't as familiar with how Panini works when this shift occurs?
I mean, stay flexible. I mean, we're all in for a ride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just can't imagine them treating WWE flawless if they make that product,
Sure.
like NBA. You know what I mean? Like the audience just isn't the same. And in my experience, a lot of wrestling collectors aren't willing to spend that kind of coin on stuff right away. Once we as a community get more educated on these super high-end patch autos and all that, maybe that'll be different. But if I was Panini, I wouldn't come in like a wrecking ball with these big numbers. You might lose your audience before you even had them.
And speaking of that, good segue. I'm sure you saw just kind of the influx of people coming in and swooping up everything that was 2021 Transcendent. And I'm not just talking about like, first of all, those, what is it like? It was like 15,000 a box or something like that.
Yeah, like a briefcase.
Yeah. And people are coming in just buying tons of that stuff and pulling those superfractors. You know, we had the one of one Vince McMahon. That's, I believe, the highest recorded Raw wrestling card sale ever. And we've got people in here buying all this stuff, but a lot of the people buying this stuff aren't the traditional wrestling card collectors or the communities they're coming in from sports cards. You have any opinion on that and how that may reflect availability possibly for some of the diehard current collectors?
I mean, the people you're talking about, they're like the ultra high end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't speak for, your audience or you, but like for me, like I like to touch my toe in the high end from time to time. But like for me, I'm a family of 6. High end for me is like $500, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Understandable.
So that ultra premium high end, I mean, there's just not a lot of fish in that pond, so I don't think it's going to affect us a lot. One thing that I think the wrestling community needs is kind of what the Pokemon community ended up getting, is these big name people on social media start doing it. Logan Paul, what was it, yesterday he bought a case of first edition Pokemon for $3.5 million.
Yep.
And he's constantly tweeting it, and he's showing up to a press conference with a chain with a Charizard hanging on his neck.
Yep.
And stuff like that. Now, I'm not a Pokemon guy. I've never really dabbled in that too much. I did a couple years ago with my son. But as far as nostalgia and all that, and maybe I'm extremely biased, but I'd take Hulk Hogan over Pikachu any day.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I could just imagine if somebody did the same exact thing and carried in a 1982 Wrestling All-Stars Hulk Hogan around their neck. Like, I think that's what the community needs is someone of note, someone of some stature. Gary Vee did it for a smidge, and you've seen what happened then.
Right.
I mean, he just did a Instagram post, and it went bananas off one post. So we'll see if someone big that has some clout, starts dropping some nuggets via social media. I think we're all in for a wild ride.
Yeah, and I keep talking about, like, let's get wrestling in mainstream, push it. And like, for me, it's not like a pump and dump type thing, because a lot of the stuff I have, I'm still not going to sell, even if it like 10x'd overnight, especially the All-Stars, which we're going to talk more about here in a minute. But like, I just want them to be respected like everything else in the hobby and be at that same level. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see, that we're supposed to be kicking off with Prism. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what those prices are, what the interest is from the regular wrestling card collectors, or, do the sports card guys come in and wipe all that stuff out and then just start flipping it to us on the secondary market? It's gonna be very interesting.
Well, you think, like you said, Prism, and I could be wrong. This isn't my lane, but I do know a little bit about it. So Topps did UFC for a long time.
Yes.
And then they lost that license, and Panini picked it up. Well, you can't find UFC Prism anywhere.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, and my numbers could be off a little bit, when a box came out, they were like $400 or $500. And then within the first week, they were already going for $700. And now they're in the 4 digits right now. You know what I mean? So.
Well, and the singles on those too, on the secondary market it's not bad. Like, we had a family get together, and I thought it'd be fun to buy a blaster of Chronicles and let everybody open a pack and play kind of a game with it. And I was starting to look at the secondary market on the prices after I ripped it. And I was like, I could almost double my money just off these low end singles by flipping them for $3-4 a piece. And the box only cost, I think it was $27 for the blaster. And I was like, this is really strange because it's one of the few products that I've seen where you could actually make your money back off the rip if you didn't want any of it. So you think there's going to be a similar trajectory with WWE there now that you bring that up?
I do. I think it'd be very interesting if you could afford a case, and by you, I'm talking to me as well. if you could afford a case of WWE Prism and just let it sit, even for a year, you know, because the UFC Prism took off, you know, within a couple months. So even if you could hold it just for a year and see where that goes, but 2, 3, 4, 10 years down the road, I would be hard pressed not to believe that you're not going to make, you know, 4 or 5 times your investment. So
speaking of Panini, and this is the last thing we'll touch on. Do you think that it could really, that they seem to do a really good job with the rookie card logo? You know, it's got that badge, the RC badge. Do you think that could make a huge difference in wrestling cards going forward once they take over? Since we'll finally have a little bit of a designation.
Oh man, I can't even think wrestling cards.
You know how people are in the wrestling card hobby with this.
I can't think wrestling card rookies without thinking about your videos.
Yeah.
And wrestling rookies is about as clear as mud. But yeah, it definitely, someone needs to come in and be like, hey, this is it. You know what I mean? So I think it'd be really cool, you know, as far as value. Do I think it'll do anything? I don't know. If one thing I learned, wrestling collectors, we tend to do what we want, and we tend to think our own rookie is, this is the rookie, you know, this is the Rock rookie, the Cardinal. And then someone else comes in, no, it's not. It's the Panini. So,
hey, you know what, though? I guess in the long term, that's not necessarily a bad thing because that's just elevating 5 different cards at once, you know?
You're 100% awesome. Right.
I mean, we're still having debates over what's like everybody says 52 mantle, but then there's all these other pockets that are saying it's this one, it's that one. Same thing with Jordan and Griffey, like the GOATs. Maybe not Tom Brady. There's several options of the same year of Tom Brady. But moving into just kind of what you're collecting, you talked about autographs. What would you say kind of your primary collections are right now, or stuff that you're chasing or building?
So I'm working on a couple different sets, and I'll spill the beans on all of them. So
let's hear it.
Primary is the Wrestling All-Stars, the 82 Series A, B, the 83, and the 85 from the magazine. I really like those as well.
Yeah.
Getting them signed via a signing, or if you're lucky enough, some of them might TTM, and then sending it off to PSA. And when they come back in the slab, oh man, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. So I'm dabbling in those. I already said I'm trying to get as many WWE Living Set cards signed as well. Let's see, the Cardinal series, the series
trivia.
1, 2, and 3. Yep, the trivia games. I'm working on all of those. And I literally 2 weeks ago just started trying to get as many 2021 Topps Chrome refractors signed as possible. So I bought 2 sets, refractor sets on eBay, threw them in a binder, and I have, like, just in front of me, I have all these signings that are coming up of different guys, you know. So got him, he's doing a signing coming up. Daniel Bryanson's doing a signing, and then I don't know if you've heard of this guy.
Oh yeah, I've got some of those set out to send.
He has a signing coming up as well, and I think it's February.
Yeah.
So those are all the sets that I'm kind of working on, and it makes it fun. And then as an adult, it makes it fun to go to the mail and find things in the mail other than bills. So.
Yeah, for sure. So on I wanted to jump into the autographs. We'll start with this. I think this is another thing that I think is awesome about wrestling cards that isn't so much sports cards. Many in the sports cards community and the industry, whatever, they want it pack pulled and certified. With wrestling, we're all out here getting base cards signed and refractors signed and relics that weren't signed. That's a huge difference I've seen within the people that you operate with or talk to. Have you seen a difference in wrestling and sports where, like I have, where the wrestling fans do want base cards hand signed?
Hey man, from what I've seen so far, and you've been collecting wrestling way longer than me, but from what I've seen in my short stint is wrestling collectors don't really care what it's signed on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like what you want it signed on is different than me, is different than Rob, is different than David, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the beauty of the whole thing. You know what I mean? There's guys that want mint on box figures signed and rookie cards signed and set collectors. So I think it's super cool.
Me
I know
too.
a guy that collects index cards out of all things.
Yeah.
He collects index cards because he says he likes the beauty of the autograph with no distractions of a photo. Well, hey, I can respect that. So that's that. You know, I'm not really the guy to ask about certified autographs because I don't buy them because they're so dang expensive, man.
Yeah.
You know, so I look at it, and this is kind of what got me into collecting signed cards years ago, is let's take someone like, we'll go out of the wrestling world. Let's take someone like Darryl Strawberry, or let's take Nolan Ryan, someone like Nolan Ryan, somebody that everybody knows. And I mean, how many cards do you think that guy had in his career? Like
a ton,
thousands and thousands. Yeah. Well, there might be an image on a card that you like versus I like. You know what I mean? Like, I'm from Texas. My parents live in the same town that Nolan Ryan is from, Alvin, Texas. You know, and so we kind of like that Western thing, the cowboy boots, the cattle, and all that. Well, he had that set. What was it, like 92 Pacific, I think?
Yeah.
Well, there's cards of him in cowboy boots. Well, I like that image. I want to get that card signed.
Right.
And that's what kind of got me into collecting that stuff. So the same goes with wrestling cards. You know, there might be a Daniel Bryan card you like, or a Daniel Bryanson card that you like for the AEW. So I just think it's so cool to do that stuff because you don't have to open a pack of Topps or Panini and get a certified, and then, you know, the community tells you, well, it's worth this much.
Right.
Why is it worth that much? Because that's what the other 200 go for. Well, if I get this card signed, this might be the only one in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I like. Like, you set the comp. You are the comp if you're into that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not trying to keep making Adam Page references, but like, because you said you weren't supposed to mention cowboy stuff, but you mentioned boots, and I'm going to say the wrestling card's kind of like the Wild West. it really is. Like, but I'm with you. Like, I love the base card signed, because especially if you can get like a, you know, rookie. There were half of these guys out there. There are no rookie autos. There are no rookie auto relics. So, you know, if you can kind of create your own by getting a card and then getting it signed and then, you know, sending it to PSA to get authenticated, like, I think that's a win in my opinion. Talk about TTM. I've done several of these. Actually, I haven't done them in a while, but the most recent one I got back was like, it took me like a year to get it back, but I got a Chris Collinsworth card that was signed, so that was kind of fun. But I've done a lot of that. For anybody who's unfamiliar with TTM, talk a little bit about that, and then we'll just kind of talk a little bit about TTM.
So TTM is through the mail. It's like, it's fan mail. That's basically what it is. So I got into it when I was really, really young. I had a magazine back in the day called Tough Stuff.
Yep.
And in Tough Stuff, one of the pages, it had through the mail, and it would talk about different successes that people got that month. And they would always give about 10 to 12 addresses. And I would look through my baseball cards to see if I had any of those guys. And I ended up I got $10 a week in allowance back then. Well, back in the day when I was a kid, you could buy a book of stamps for less than that. So yeah. I ended up doing my chores for stamps for TTMing, and I never grew out of it. I think I started when I was 8 or 9, and I'm almost 40 now, and it's just fun. Like I said earlier, it just makes it awesome to go to the mailbox. And I have some cards that I got in just this week alone for TTM, and they're all wrestling, so it's something that your crowd will definitely appreciate.
Oh, cool. I don't see a lot of her stuff signed that's not out of the TNA stuff, you know what I mean?
Yep. So got her in. Got this one. I was super geeked out about this
nice
guy.
Yeah.
Hillbilly Jim. And one of my all-time favorites.
Yep.
IRS. And then he inscribed the one that says pay up.
Pay up. Yeah, that's cool.
You know, I think I had like $5 or maybe $10 donation in each one. I think the Dixie Carter was free. It says she signs her fan mail for free. IRS, I think I sent him a $5 bill. So, I mean, you go ahead and go buy 2 IRS certified autographs for $5, and I'll be sitting here waiting.
Yeah.
so that's why I do it. It's cool. It's a way to get your favorite athlete or wrestler's autograph for a lot cheaper. You know, do you lose some? Yeah, you probably lose more than you get back, but that's just part of the game.
Right.
You know?
And for the most part, if you're not sending in, like those IRS cards you got, they're base cards. They're, $5 or less, sometimes as little as 50 cents per card. So if it depends on what you're sending in, if you lose them, it's not going to be the end of the world. I took a chance on some, and luckily I got them back. I think there's a couple that I've lost, but they ended up not being that big of a deal. Go ahead.
I think the 2 biggest gambles I've ever done, which I don't recommend, and I think I'm probably an idiot for doing it, but it worked out in my favor. The 2 biggest cards I ever TTM was, I believe it's the year might be wrong. I think it's a 1963 Fleer Lance Allworth.
Oh, cool.
$400 card.
Yeah.
So I got that one, and I got it back and signed, and it's gorgeous. And then about 2 months ago, I had I don't remember the year, but Brooks Robinson rookie card.
Mm-hmm.
And that one bought for $550 on eBay. Sent it to him with a $50 donation. He put like 3 inscriptions on it in blue
cool.
Sharpie. It's like flawless. And so I made out like on that, I think the comps go for like $1,000 on that card. So
yeah. And it's a cool story to tell. Like that's part of the fun of TTM is the story is that you can tell behind it.
You have to risk it for the biscuit, but yeah, man, if that biscuit doesn't come back, that's a tough one.
Right. Yeah. So what is your experience with like the talent? Are they like, I'm going to kind of bundle a bunch of stuff here. Have you gotten them back and people saying they're not going to sign? Have they been very open to you sending them? Like, how are you getting this information? There's a lot of stuff there, but I'm just trying to give people more information on the TTM because, I know there are well-known signers out there that are like, send me everything. And then there are ones that are like, they'll send it back if something's not right, or they just don't want to sign at all. So what kind of information do you have out there for people regarding those kind of things?
So I get most of my addresses from a website called Star Tiger. It's like $5 a month. And you can go on there and see success rates and all that. There's different Facebook groups. I think it's called like Pro Wrestling Autograph Chasers or something like that. It's mainly a TTM group, and people will post successes. Well, if you got it in the mail, there's a good chance I could probably get it in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
So we go down that route, and then kind of word of mouth. Once, like anything, like any hobby, once you're in the TTM world, you start getting TTM friends,
mm-hmm.
and then they'll write you, oh, hey, I got Ted DiBiase in today. Oh man, awesome. Congratulations. You mind sharing the address?
Yeah.
So it just kind of grows, it might be slow going at first if you've never done it, but just keep it up. Like I said, I've been doing it since I was 8. So that's all I got for you.
I used to do a lot of handwriting letters
mm-hmm.
on that, because I think that helps instead of just, sending a card and saying sign. Like I legitimately would stop and think like, okay, who's this going to? What's something like, I sent some to Lawler a couple years ago, and I was talking about I didn't get Memphis Wrestling, but I've since gone back and watched Memphis Wrestling, and it's like my favorite stuff outside of like ECW. And then I, referenced him calling ECW extremely crappy wrestling during that run. So I would write stuff in there like he knew I was a legitimate fan and wasn't just looking to, because I don't think I've sold very many of my TTMs. Most of them I still have, or most of them I'm keeping forever. So it's like you said, it's just kind of a fun thing, and the community's fun as well. I'm not as active in that side as I am strictly wrestling cards, but it is fun. So talk about, speaking of the TTM, your TTM projects that you do videos on, talk about creating content. I know you've been doing that for a while. Just talk about what it's been like for you. Is it kind of like I talk about how it's kind of turned into a hobby within a hobby for me. How's it
Mhm.
going for you, and why do you enjoy doing that for the community?
So I have been actively making content on YouTube for about 10 years. I don't really follow my subscribers. I don't
Hmm.
follow my view count. I think I'm just slightly over 3,000 subscribers. Um, but it's something I just did back in the day because I'm in the Navy. I've been in the Navy for it'll be 20 years in March. It's coming March. And so I'm moving every 2 to 3 years from state to state. And so like I don't have a lot of friends that aren't on social media or the internet.
Sure.
My neighbors, I don't come close with them because I'm moving.
Right.
Um, so I started making content on YouTube, and I found people were like, "Oh, that's awesome! This is cool. That's cool," and it just snowballed into like literally my contacts on my phone, other than family,
It's
it's like
all,
all
yeah.
YouTubers.
That's
Um,
awesome.
it's insane. And then like we go to the National Sports Collectors Convention every year, the national
Hmm.
as it's referred to, and like I think I haven't been because, like I said, I'm in the military. My schedule's terrible. But the last one I went to, there was like 50 dudes meeting every night, all YouTube content creators, and there's nothing in it for anybody other than just hanging out, and it's
Right.
just awesome. Um, so I would say if you want to get into making content, I would definitely say um, know the audience that you want to attract, and then keep a routine, a schedule. I like to do that, but man, it's tough.
Yeah.
I know you work nights, and I imagine that's probably tough to keep some kind of routine.
Yep.
I think you do really well.
Thank you.
My schedule, like I'm on what they call right now sea duty rotation. So like I'm deployable. So this year alone, like I deploy this coming August for 7 months. Well, social media, man, if you're out of sight for 2 weeks, like you're out of mind.
Right. Yeah.
So when I come back from that deployment 7 months later, there's going to be a whole lot of people like, man, who's
Where
this guy?
this? Yeah. Where did he go, or who is this guy? One of the two.
Right. So, keep that routine of content coming out, and like anything that's worth doing, just keep doing it. And it's slow. You're not going to get 10,000 followers or subscribers
Sure.
overnight, but it's fun. And like I already said, like most of my friends are from the YouTube community, man. So
Yeah, that's a really good thing, especially with like the pandemic in the last couple of years and just kind of how busy everybody gets. The fact that you can get into these communities, and the people that live next door to you, or if you're lucky enough to have a local card shop near you, maybe they don't collect wrestling cards, but now you've got this whole worldwide community that you can communicate with in a matter of seconds at any time, and it's a lot of fun. Like I have fun talking to people within the hobby every single day, just even if it's for 1 second, check out this card, how you doing, blah blah blah. So
right.
it's a lot of fun. I also want to applaud you for, I know you're a wrestling card person, so you get it, but you're also one of the few content creators that actually does wrestling card. Like you have a designated show for wrestling
Oh,
cards, and you specifically talk about wrestling cards as opposed to, that's the whole reason that I started it, is because I looked out there and I'm like, okay, there's some breakers, they're ripping some packs every now and then, but nobody's actually like talking like deep dives into wrestling cards, into sets, or philosophical like market talks or whatever. Nobody's doing that. So, again, thank you for making your content and continuing to push wrestling cards forward. Speaking of that, this is our last question. We're going to close with this.
okay.
In your opinion, where do you see the wrestling card hobby going in the next year, 2 years? Take it for whatever you want, whether that's pricing, popularity, sets, anything.
I think we don't know what we don't know. And there's a lot of variables that could really swing either way as far as what does Panini do with the license, with the WWE license. I think if they hit a grand slam with it and they have the right price point and they release the right products, I mean, we could be at the bottom of the mountain right now.
Yeah.
Of where this is going. Like I said already, I think we're one influencer away from it taking off. And man, if you get 2 or 3 involved, forget about it.
Right.
So I feel like what AEW is doing is really bringing in more people and more of a fresh crowd. And Upper Deck, they're no slouch.
Right.
They have some big cards that they've done in the past, like what is the brand, Exquisite.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, imagine like an AEW Exquisite, man. Are you kidding me?
Oh, the precious metal
So
gems, they still have the
yeah,
rights to that. Yeah.
right. So I would say it's a very exciting time to be a wrestling
Yep.
card collector, but there's a whole lot of unknown. So if you were to tell me in 5 years from now, as a wrestling card community, we're back to where we were 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be like, nah, I could see it.
I don't know.
No, I'm saying if it doesn't keep growing, but if you say that it's bigger than Pokemon is right now, I'd be like, I could see that too. I think that it's all about how we play our cards as a community,
Mm-hmm.
how these companies play their cards, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I said that was the last question. We'll circle back to what you said at the beginning of the show. You haven't bought football cards in quite a while, but you keep buying wrestling.
Yeah.
Same thing. Like wrestling, no matter if you're a modern collector, vintage collector, or you want to collect like pre-war wrestling cards because they're out there. Because everybody likes pre-war baseball. But no matter where you're at in that, like it never gets old. It's never out, like it's never technically out of date because you either have an attachment to a wrestler, it's nostalgia, or you do watch current product and you really believe in a Hangman Adam Page. I'm sorry to keep mentioning Cowboy, but like that's just what I love about wrestling cards. And I really think that we've seen people, a lot of popular platforms you may have seen, podcasts and such, talk about, I watched that F1 documentary and I'm hooked. Like, I think that's the same thing with wrestling. Like, wrestling's even more of a long-term deal than any of these other sports. Because I'll ask you, how many times do you go back and watch old Super Bowls or old NBA finals as opposed to old WrestleManias?
Right. No doubt.
So the nostalgia is just going to continue no matter what the age group is. I think nostalgia is going to continue to carry wrestling cards just permanently slow up and to the right and popular.
Well, if you think, Zan, like, think 5 years back, how many podcasts could you name?
Very few.
I mean, me personally, I couldn't name them on one finger. So I couldn't name any, honestly. And, you have, I think a lot of the stuff that the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast group and their, oh man, I just spaced out, their card guys.
Card Foundation.
Thank you. What those guys are doing and their approach is really just awesome. Really embracing and trying to bring everyone together. You just didn't see that stuff. Not even really 3 years ago.
Yeah.
When I got into it at the beginning of COVID, you didn't really see it. But since in the past 2 years, it's really slow and steady. I guess you could say it's growing.
And I also like how there's pockets, just like sports now. I've heard a lot of people say Card Foundation is more like modern, more up to date, stuff like that. Me and Tony are all over the place, whether it's vintage or modern or market talk or whatever. And then there's pockets that are like, hey, I'm all into indie cards, or I want all the all-stars, like the all-stars have their own collectors now. There's collectors that just want the, extreme vintage stuff, or collectors that only want, a specific set. It's just awesome how like segregated but all together that the wrestling card community has become. So
we didn't even touch on it, but I think the whole indie card thing is so intriguing to me.
Yes, it's nuts.
I mean, this is stuff that a year ago, like, you could buy these sets for $20-$30.
Yep.
And now, forget about it. Like a lot of the sets that MJF is in or Darby Allin's in, insane. I mean, absolutely bananas. The rate of growth that they've had from when the community or the hobby world noticed them to now, oh man, it's insane.
Yeah, and for once, I want to take the dollar amount out of it and say that the fact that people want them, like regardless of the price or the rarity or the value, the fact that there's a demand for these actual cards from, traditional non-card collectors, maybe they're in figures, maybe they just don't collect anything, but they have an attachment now to AEW. They want these cards. And that's huge news for the hobby, but also pro wrestling in general.
One thing I think it's interesting about the AEW and the indie cards, if you think about it, the Husky Harris and the Roman Reigns, those, what was that indie cards it said that they were in?
The FCW, the Florida Championship Wrestling.
Thank you. Those cards aren't cheap, but I wouldn't say they're expensive. You know, and WWE, Roman Reigns is the king of the mountain right now as far as the collecting world active. You know what I mean? And that card isn't terribly expensive. But you look at the indie circuit and you go to AEW, man, there's a bunch of those dudes that are in AEW that those cards are super, super, super pricey.
Right.
So I think it's interesting that
yes,
the hobby will tell you that WWE is the king, but yet when it comes to collecting these indie cards, AEW is, man, they're kind of sneaky on what's going on there.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting back because I'm not a big indie card guy, but I'm definitely following it and trying to figure out what the heck is going on here, because those cards just keep ticking up.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And they keep disappearing into people's collections. They keep getting, like you said, people are, it's a fun thing. You taking them to all these shows and getting them signed, because unlike a lot, like I know there are sports conventions where you can get modern players to sign, but it's nothing like wrestling. Like, you know, you can, it's real. I keep saying real life Pokemon where you can actually go meet them, because it's all character based and story based. And it's just cool that, you know, whoever you latch onto, you can take that card, go talk to them about it, get it signed. It's an amazing thing. So go ahead.
You see, like when talking about autographs and stuff, so I've probably been to, in my lifetime, probably 200 signings with athletes, with sport athletes, and there's always a handler, you know, and there's always someone taking your stuff and they hand it to the athlete, so on and so forth. Well, at these conventions, like, you're going straight up to the person, to the wrestler, and yeah, you're giving them money, but you're shaking hands and you're taking pictures, and you get, that's not much, you know, 20, 30 seconds of their time to tell a story or ask a question. So it's the same thing, but man, it's two different lanes completely. So if you haven't got to a wrestling event or a wrestling signing, I highly suggest it, because in my experience, these wrestlers really, really know where their bread is buttered, and they really treat their fans really well at these events.
Yeah, for the most part too. But even if it's a virtual signing, it seems like the talent is either interested in what they're doing, or they're happy to have people remember them if they're an older star, or they're just happy to be there. Like, a lot of times I see sports signings and they're just like,
right. And it could be not even that big of an athlete.
Right. Yeah. It's like you're kind of inconveniencing them by paying them money to have them sign their name. So again, that's just something that's awesome about wrestling. Thanks for your time today. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can watch your content, check you out on social media.
On Instagram, my Instagram is Slab City Sports Cards with an underscore underneath each word. And then on YouTube, I'm just CardCutter, one word, and that's it.
Make sure to subscribe to his channel, guys. I'm going to put links to his social platforms and links to the YouTube page in the show notes. So if you don't want to, if you're listening to this, you can search it. But if you don't want to listen, just check the show notes, click on the link, subscribe to his channel, follow him on Instagram. Like, I love your content, but man, when I'm seeing those pictures on Instagram of your TTM returns, I'm just like, yeah.
Thanks, right. Thanks for having me. And this was about the quickest hour of chatting I've had in a long time, man.
So what happens when you start talking wrestling? When you start talking wrestling, the time flies by. So thanks for everything you do for the community and carving your own niche, and, you know, helping us out with this information today. So thanks everybody for watching. Have a good one. Thanks again to Garrett for coming on the show today. Greatly appreciated of his time. Make sure to check out the show notes below for links to Garrett's social platforms, as well as links to his YouTube page. Again, subscribe to his channel. And while you're down there checking out the links, check out the links to everything I'm involved with, the podcasts, the Patreon page, and other ways that you can help show your support. But until the next video, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content. We'll see you there.